So there's no getting away from it. The release and reception of Spitfire's hand Zimmer Strings has been a bit of a roller coaster over the last week or so. So before we dive into this review, here's a ton of fun for my absolutely favourite hand Zimmer score, and I'm not even joking.
Hello everyone.
With this review, I'm looking at the first release of hand Zimmer Strings. This is version 1 of the library. It's 183 gigabytes running in a brand new engine from Spitfire. There are 147 techniques here with shorts, longs and effects, up to 26 microphone positions and a total of 344 players. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the specific statistics of this library beyond that, as there's a lot of other stuff to cover in this review. So you can find out all the stats. Spitfire have put those together on their website with the usual video walkthroughs, and you can also download the manual there as well. So first off, let's have a listen to some of my favourite patches and mic positions. Before I get into the good and bad points of this library, I want to talk for a minute about the concept of it. Prior to release, one of the main marketing points is that this is a library which Hans Zimmer has helped to develop. Now, to me, this is somewhat of a snapshot of Hans Zimmer at a particular time in his career, most notably around the time of scoring Dunkirk, I would say, although feel free to correct me on that. As such, I don't think it represents an all-encompassing catalogue of every string technique he's ever used. For example, there's not really anything which can do Pirates of the Caribbean or Dark Knight shorts right out of the box. So for this library to make sense to me, I'm considering it to be more like a big Spitfire collection and really taking Zimmer's name out of the picture. Sorry, Hans. So that's how I'm going to judge this library in the most part. So first up, how does it sound? As to be expected, with Spitfire products, the sound is pretty special. The softer articulations are the outright winners here, and it's been fun to hear variations on Air Studio's normal setups, like Super Flotando playing from up in the balcony, and that just sounds really lovely. There are many mic positions here, up to 26 for some instrument groups, and it's a pretty wet sound overall. You're going to get the drier sound with a combination of close and spot mics, but even then there's a lot of hall reflections. Personally, I don't mind that. A bit of baked-in ambience is all good as far as I'm concerned, but this might be an issue for some people. Comparing it to Albion 1, this collection of strings has a bit more bite to the short samples, especially at high velocities. Because of the larger number of players, the longs sound smoother. However, I do think they sound a bit too smooth in some cases, as they start to take on a bit of a synthetic vibe if you're not careful with how you use the mic positions. If you look at the marketing blurb for this library, you'll see that Christian Henson says that some of the more unusual articulations here take on a fresh beauty due to the number of players and the method of recording. I'd not entirely agree with that, but there's certainly some lovely sounding articulations here. However, I was constantly reminded of other Spitfire libraries like Albion 1 and Tundra, which had similar and in some cases exactly the same articulations, albeit recorded with fewer mic positions and players. Comparing some of the samples to their direct equivalents in other Spitfire libraries, the ones in hand Zimmer Strings have a slightly quieter noise floor, well, at least for the closed tree and outrigger mics anyway. Obviously, it's impossible to compare the other mic positions included, as there are many more in hand Zimmer Strings. And that's kind of the point of this library from a sound point of view. The many and varied mics, crazy articulations, and obscene number of players means that you can build up string sections that are unique to you, and they're completely detached from a real-life orchestra. I've got to applaud that kind of thinking, and I think that's going to create some really interesting combinations of strings and timbres as people start to get to grips with the library. So hand Zimmer Strings is launching in a brand new interface for Spitfire. It's one that they've developed in-house, and I'll have a look at that specifically. The interface is very slick looking and mostly functional and intuitive. I did like the long faders, the spot mic stereo spread function, and a few other controls on there which were common to some engines that I'd used before, but it was nice to see them all together. You can change the size of the interface quite easily, and I did appreciate that. That's going to be useful for people on big systems or small screens. I did also like the preview feature. You can hear the articulations before you choose them, and it's nice to be able to save and load mic preset options. There's help text available when you hover over controls and information about the presets, and you can easily change key switch positions. All of this was good stuff. Having said that, there are quite a few cons and also bugs in version 1 of this library. So I'm going to run through some of those. I'm going to do it quite quickly because some of these will be squashed, hopefully within the next few months. First off, it's a massive library and you may find yourself juggling system resources to keep it running smoothly. There's definitely going to be a trade-off for some people between the amount that's loaded into RAM as a buffer and your hard disk speed. Did it run smoothly for me personally? Well, mostly, but not entirely. Even though I was streaming from SSD with 32 gigs of RAM, I was waiting around 10 seconds for some presets with just one mic position loaded, and it did crash a couple of times on me. There's been a lot of chat about articulations and microphone positions not being consistent across sections. That is the case. Nothing that particularly bothered me, to be honest, because I'm not trying to create an authentic orchestral mock-up with this product. But I guess if you are trying to do that, it is going to bug you a little bit. Legato is definitely problematic, and it's essentially broken as of version 1 of this library. I did find that some samples haven't been played that consistently, especially with these short articulations, and some other ones do suffer from too much noise. It's also annoying that you can't exclude specific round robins to get rid of this problem. The shorts, well, they're not quite short and tight enough for really fast playing. There is a tightening control which you can use on the interface to cut a little bit further into the sample, but if you're really going to go for fast, dark night kind of spiccatos, you're going to have trouble. With the interface, there's way too much clicking and scrolling around to access articulations and mic positions. Really, with the size of that interface window, you probably could have put everything on one screen. There's no need for multiple menus. When you're changing articulations from the main menu, you do have to reset mic positions as well. I spoke to Spitfire about this. It's something they're looking into. For the patches with more than one articulation, it's not possible to purge specific articulations from the set. Again, they said they're going to check this out. You will need to boost up the volume of some of the quieter articulations, as I did find them unnecessarily quiet. Now, I don't know whether they haven't leveled these out because the noise floor is going to be too prohibitive, but I'm having to bring up the gain to hear a lot of those articulations. You can stack articulations in one instance of an interface, very much like adding multiple instruments to one version of Contact, and you can transpose one or more of them as well. That's quite handy. But I have to say this function doesn't really work very well. As soon as you start moving between articulations, it forgets that you've stacked things up. Also, you can't assign the same external MIDI controller to more than one fader or dial. For example, this would have been handy for moving dynamics and vibrato at the same time. As of version 1 of this instrument, it's not possible. So what's my conclusion? Well, I wanted to give this library a very fair chance, as trust me, there's plenty of people looking to knock Spitfire off their pedestal at the moment with this new release. Truth be told, I did come away with mixed feelings. I don't feel like the Hans Zimmer moniker is really justified here. Although there's much in the way of lovely long strings, there are lots of his trademark techniques missing from the presets. It may well be that he's moved on from the bombastic flourishes of Pirates of the Caribbean, but there's lots of people who'd love to be able to recreate that sound straight out of the box, and with Hans Zimmer Strings, they're gonna have trouble. The sound is mostly really gorgeous, but there are quite a number of ropey samples. They don't really spoil the party, but I wish you could exclude them with some round-robin editing. The new engine and interface has its problems at the moment, and it's largely a disappointment beyond the basic functions. I'd like to see RAM usage improve with a lighter set of patches or more purging options, but I can understand why Spitfire chose to take the playback engine in-house and not be beholden to native instruments. There are certain advantages of this in the future, possibly. Maybe they'll be able to use it finally to offer library demos. Here's hoping. However, at the moment the design hinders rather than helps the end user, and there's way too much clicking about to get some really basic things done. Full price for this library is £700. Is it worth that at the moment? Well, probably not if you already have a good collection of existing Spitfire strings, as the sound is close but not identical. Further down the line, once the bugs are fixed, I don't think anyone who can afford it is going to be disappointed by this library as long as they've got a good enough system to run it. Just don't expect Hans Zimmer right out of the box without putting a bit of effort in. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.